Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the School of PE's weekly podcast. I'm Chris Miller, and today I got a nice guest with us here, Nabeal. So let's welcome him on board. He's an engineer, but he's more than an engineer, but I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself. So, Nabeal, thank you so much for coming out and joining me today.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate the time that you put in to host me. I'm very pleased to be with you. It's definitely a pleasure being with you. This is Nabil Khatib. I go by Newton. I'm an engineer. I'm not an engineer, as Chris mentioned. I'm also a tutor, and I'm also the CEO and the founder of Legend for Tutoring. I'm a structural engineer, particular bridge engineer, um, and I just passed my PE, my NCS PE exam, civil structural. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, congratulations on that. That's a huge milestone. So this will be this topic's a good topic. It's one that a lot of the listeners probably be like, wow, I can take some good value from it. Some tips and strategies on how you passed your PE exam. First question for you is, I know you said you just took it. Did you take it paper or pencil, or did you take it once it turned over to the CBT?
CBT. So I took the CBT, the computer based. It was very challenging, but it was kind of helpful that you have the manual. So it kind of like goes both way, pros and cons. I like the CBT. I like, especially in the office, you do like a lot of manual, off computers. So
hmm
it's kind of like helpful.
Very good, very good. So a lot of times people are a little worried about change, right? Change kind of freaks people out, and paper pencil, you were allowed to take in an entire library if you could fit it into a suitcase. You had a lot of references. Whether or not you referred to those during the exam, I think it gave you that security blanket, knowing that if you had needed to look something up, you could. And then you come to the computer base where you get nothing but the PE Civil Reference Handbook by the NCS, and then, of course, any of your respective codes and standards. So, did you, think it was harder because you weren't able to take all those references in?
I think it was pretty challenging, especially it's not like the FE, it's just the handbook. The what confused me the most is you can't open more than one manual at a time, and you can't open more than one section. For example,
Oh,
steel. If you want to go take the steel manual, you could tab it, and you're like, oh, here's J. I could look for the connection or bolts or whatever weld. But for the NCE, reference design, standards that they gave you or they gave me, I was like, where is I want to see multiple things. I want to, and if you
uh,
want to go with like Control F, it pops up like 2,000 pages and I was like, it's not helpful. So you got to
right.
know exactly, and that's one of the strategies that I will be talking later. It's you have to know where are the reference, things that you need. Tab them in your kind of back memory, if that makes sense.
No, it makes great sense, and I 100% agree with you. When you can take in whatever references you want, and I've always told students, when you take in these references, tab them. That way, you're not spending a lot of time flipping through pages, things like that. But now, all of a sudden, holy cow, there's nothing to tab. Interesting to know that you can only run one reference at a time. My thought would be like, oh, great, okay, I'll have the reference handbook open, I'll have this standard book open, this one open. But whoo,
Yeah.
okay, that's good to know for sure. Obviously, taking the exam is different right now
Mhm.
from paper pencil, but what about your preparation for preparing for this new computer based format, as opposed to, hey, I can take in 1,000 books if I needed to? Give me some thoughts on that.
I think one key solution for this, let me start with this. So the PE exam has two components, obviously, breadth and the depth, right? So if you want to really ace the breadth, you got to make sure that you're familiar with the PE reference, handbook, which is very similar to the FE. It
Mhm.
doesn't have a lot of changes. It's pretty much, the topics that the guideline has on the NCS. So you gotta know where to pull things from the manual. And
Mhm.
that will take care of like 41 questions because they do 41 and 39, 41 for the breadth and 39 for the depth.
Hmm.
So you're good on that aspect. So if you took the FE or if you're preparing for the FE, you should be very familiar with the reference manual, and that's applies to the PE. The other part of the PE is the depth part. It's very challenging. So I knew it's going to be, I watch a lot of YouTube video, and especially on how to tap things in your memory. Like you have to say, okay, here's, ACI. ACI has 32 chapters. You don't need all of those 32 chapters. You probably need chapter 6, chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 9, 10, and then go to 22, 23, and maybe like half 25. So make sure that you know that
Mm,
chapter 9, hypothetically, has all the beam stuff. Chapter 10, the columns. Chapter 11, walls. Chapter 22, all the reduction factors. Chapter 23 tells you about like the design, where to pull, equation from. I know it seems pretty hard, but guess what? You gotta prepare for this test for at least 2 to 3 months, and you gotta do
mhm,
a lot of practice exam. What I did actually, I printed certain, like, basically, for example, have the ACI here, and then put it on my desk. And every morning when I study, I look at it, just familiarize my eyes with this, so I can remember things offline,
mhm,
because I just like reading things. So writing, don't try to typing things on computer. I don't think it helps you memorize things. That's just me. I could
mhm.
be wrong.
No, that's some good advice, and I like the idea of the mental tabbing, right? Um, I think one thing it helps with too is if you know, like you said, okay, chapter 9 is this, chapter 6 is this. At least if you can remember that, you're not being like during the exam, like, oh man, okay, let me open this chapter. Oh no, it's not here. Let me go to this chapter, not here. You're wasting valuable time, and what happens then is you become frustrated, right? And then
Exactly.
you might get out of your mindset. You might be off your game, and then that's just going to have a trickle down effect and can start messing up a whole lot of things. So I like the mental tabbing. I think that's very important.
And,
And
and
also,
Chris,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry to
Yes.
interrupt.
No, no, please.
When you do that mental tabbing thing, you don't have to remember the subsection or the subsection,
Okay.
right? But when you do like chapter 7, oh, okay, chapter 7 has one way slab. Okay, I know that if I need the thickness of that slab, I know the length. Just as an example, length of the span. Okay, I'll divide it by 24. I know it's going to be in chapter 7. You go look it up. Chapter 7. Okay, chapter 7, sections 5 or section 6, whatever. That reduces a lot of time. And instead, having like, oh, I need to do Control F. Guess what? ACI has so many thickness,
Mm.
obviously finding, or so many slab, or bending moments. You try to look for bending moment, negative bending moment, even like being more niche, negative bending moment. Get a lot of these search or finds.
No, that's some helpful advice too, because a lot of people think Control F is is the one answer for everything, right? Hey, you
Hmm.
can't find it, Control F it. But when like you say, let's say you're searching for thickness, you get 600 results, and I'm throwing
Hmm.
numbers out there. You
Yep.
get 600 results out there. And then
Hmm.
you're like, oh man, what do I need now? Now you're spending time trying to think of what's the next keyword to
Hmm.
add to thickness to reduce your search. So, no, that's good. I like that idea. That's some good advice. Um, you know, the previous exam, and what I mean by previous, I'm not saying the topics, the syllabus changed, the specs stayed the same, right? The
Hmm.
exam specs staying the same. What I'm talking about is change in format.
Hmm.
So, when it was paper pencil, you knew that you were walking into a morning portion of the exam and you're walking into an afternoon portion of the exam. Morning covered your breadth, afternoon covered your depth. So, you might have figured, okay, I'm very strong in the breadth. So you're pumped, you're ready to go for that exam. You crush the breadth, and then okay, if I can just survive the depth, I'm going to be okay. But now that delineation is gone, right? There is
Hmm.
no morning, there's no afternoon. So
Hmm.
let me ask you this, Nabil. So let's say I'm sitting for the exam. And let's say question number one was something on geometrics, and then
Hmm.
question number two might have been something on hydraulics.
Hmm.
And let's say I'm a structural depth. Could I get a so-called depth question like as question number four? So is there no clear cut to where, hey, you're only going to get questions on subjects 1 through 8 on the syllabus on the exam specs in the first 39 questions, or are they still split?
I think they still split. Not for the depth though. I got some of the breadth question
Mm,
on the depth, and even actually got some of the depth questions, but not a whole lot.
okay.
Like maybe you get two questions. Like one of the questions that I remember I got on the in the breadth morning section, I got on the live load for accidental or impact 1.25. You like read through the ASCE chapter, I think, for section 6, and you like find it there. I was like, wait, this is supposed to be breadth. Why
Hmm.
am I getting depth questions? And the time, even they did not tell me that, hey, once you finish the breadth, you could just submit it and go and save 1 hour for your depth. They did not mention anything about it. I was like looking at the hour, I was like, 4 hours. I'm like, why the clock did not stop? So I raised my hand. Hey, just it's 3 now. The 4 hours gone. It's being the next 4 hours. Why I'm not, kicked out? Like, no, you could take 6 hours, 7 hours for breadth and like stop it and go take a break and then come and do just 1 hour for depth. Like, if you guys told me I finished the basically the breadth like 70 minutes after the test starts, literally, it was pretty easy. The depth, the breadth, the depth was definitely challenging and more like nit gritty questions.
All right, no, that's good to know too. Here's another question I get from students as well, and maybe you can answer this a little bit better. Is, in the reference handbook, there's equations, figures, tables, and things like that, right? So if I'm facing a so-called breadth question, will that equation be in the handbook for like where everyone will have it, or maybe like let's say you're a structural person and your design standards and references have that equation that the reference handbook doesn't have? Are you at an advantage over somebody else that might be like a water resources depth person?
I think you I don't think you're taking advantage being a structural having some breadth questions,
Okay.
because I think the PE reference handbook, that first version, I think has all the stuff that you need to pass and crush your breadth. And again, I keep mentioning this to clients, to friends, to anyone. I don't think that you have to be afraid of the breadth, but you gotta be very, very familiar with the manual or the handbook, right? Because think about it as some people trying to memorize things and go to the test,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that's not going to work.
No.
Because if you keep memorizing, 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 I think at some point you're going to like lose everything. Like, oh, what section was that? Instead, what I really recommend myself first and my people, second, just know what are the most important topics that you need to memorize. Don't look and read every single page. It's probably helpful if you are a big fan of reading like me. I like reading. I like to read manuals, and I used to read Ashto on light rail, back in the undergrad and back in the grad, which that's very, very weird.
No, and it's funny is when I do demos for students, I always tell them, hey, become best friends with this manual, because it is your only reference for the exam. And if you're spending a lot of time flipping through pages, you're
Mhm.
wasting valuable time, because essentially it's a race against the clock.
Yep.
But also, I tell students is memorization is great, but it's also really, really bad in the sense that if you fill your head with all this stuff and you're just memorized and you don't know why or how something should be, you don't have an understanding of how it works. What happens is when you're sitting in the exam and let's say you get flustered by a question, you start to panic, and all of a sudden that memorization, it goes out the window and you're done. So I think learning the manual, knowing why you should know something's important. But I appreciate the insight that you're giving, Nabil. um,
Thanks, Chris.
Another question I get that maybe I can't answer for sure, maybe you can answer, maybe none of us can answer, is
Exactly.
people ask me, well, I took the FE and I'm getting ready to take the PE. How difficult is the PE exam? I'm like, well, there's a lot of factors, right? How far for a FE example, how far are you removed from college? What do you do for your professional work? So, is there an answer you can give that to the question that is, how difficult are the PE exams really?
I can't give an answer, Chris, but it's not like the absolute right answer.
Right.
I think personally, I deeply think that the PE was easier than the FE, and I have reasons for that. It's not because I want to say just like easier. For me, I don't like to have so many environmental questions,
Mhm.
engineering econs that don't do engineering econs at work. So that's something that I, have lack, or, I don't understand it very thoroughly, right? Go to certain topics on props and stats. I'm not
Mhm.
a big fan of props and stats. I mean, I could props and stats. The only advantage that I take on props and stats because I tutor and I help people with FE. But if
Mhm.
I'm trying to take the PE versus the FE, I would definitely say that the PE is easier, at least for me. There's
Mhm.
no math questions, even though that I'm pretty good, solid at math, but you get certain statics questions that, so if you can do really good on statics, if you can do really good on the mechanics of materials, some of the water stuff, some of the curves for transportation, and some of the basic just engineering, fundamental engineering, I think you're good on the breadth. But at the FE, you're taking 14 topics that some of them surveying. I did not take a surveying course. I
Right.
barely remember anything on surveying. Bearing and all that. Azimuth, and I was like, "Ooh, this is just I learned it from the FE. Otherwise,
Right.
above the window."
No, you're absolutely right. I talked to both FE and I talked to PE students, and I tell them I think the FE is more challenging in the sense that, some of these FE exams have 17 topics,
Hmm.
and when you're in college, you're learning thermodynamics, you're learning mathematics, statistics. So if you take the FE maybe right after you graduate or your senior year, you probably have a higher chance of passing because those subjects are still fresh in your mind. Versus I couldn't imagine if I'm like, okay, today I got to go back and relearn thermodynamics and all that. I'd be like, whoa, I'll go do something else. So absolutely agree. I think the PE is more, the subjects are more condensed. They may ask you more in depth, but also your work experience is going to pave the way for your success on the exam as well. So, thank you for that, Nabil. Let me ask you a question. So, let's say I'm an engineer and I'm working out in the field, but I'm working under a PE. So, I'm not a PE yet. And I've graduated with a degree in engineering. What is the point of me obtaining my PE?
Oh, that's a great question, Chris. Well, several reasons. Number one, obviously salary. Two, career. It opens a lot of doors for you. Three, you could open your own firm if you have a
Mm,
PE, right? It gives you the responsibility. Hey, you are a PE right now. You
hmm.
are a professional engineer. I can't speak of professional engineering right now because I just took the NCS and I'm still having the seismic and surveying. So wish me a luck on that because
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
doing the California board. So and then a lot of think that, at least for me, when you have a title after your name, you have to act that you own, that you maintain that title. So you can't be just design engineer. You design things, you give it to your supervisor, start checking your work, probably a crappy work or probably a good work but has a lot of mistakes. When you have the mentality, hey, I'm a PE right now, I have to act like I am a professional engineer, right? So that thing helps you mitigate a lot of the mistakes.
Mm,
It opens a lot of doors for you. You don't want to you want to seal some plans. You have
hmm.
that sort of thirsty of sealing plans, or you're kind of like, I want to make sure that I have all the things right on this plan, so I have to act like a PE in order to stamp it. Because
Hmm.
if you're not a PE, you're probably going to put certain things that you're not 100% sure, because you're not stamping things, you're not sealing plans. But when you seal something, you'll be more
Hmm.
cautious,
Hmm.
right? And at least for me, it opens a lot of doors. I'm a person who likes to work for myself, and I'm planning to open an engineering firm. And obviously, I can't do that until I obtain and a PE. Whether California, Colorado, doesn't matter, but the PE is definitely essential.
No, it makes sense. I appreciate you sharing that, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I think the ownership is important, and then yeah, I mean, to be able to do things on your own and not have to, go to someone else to stamp them. I think that's all valuable information. So part of taking an exam, whether it's an FE, PE, whether you're taking your MCAT, your NCLEX for nurses, you got to have a plan,
Hmm.
right? I
Hmm.
mean, you can't go into this thinking, hey, I'm just going to show up on exam date and let the cards fall where they may. So I think planning is important. I mean, without a plan, you're probably going to fail.
Hmm.
So what are some of the things that you did to formulate your plan for preparing for the PE exam?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, Multiple things. The first thing that I always write something before I go to bed. What would be the
Mm,
next, you know, um, to-do list in the morning. For me, writing something in the afternoon or the late afternoon or the evening, say, hey, tomorrow I need to do this. You know, it could be as simple as just reading some of the sections from the manual.
hmm.
At least be productive. At least, know what would be the goals for next, day that you're going to be living, right? The other thing that you have to do is, okay, I work 8 to 5. I'm not going to have a lot of time, studying during weekdays, which is very common that I get this question, right? And you
Hmm.
absolutely get this question. Um, what about weekends? Or what about 1 hour after you go home and take a shower, take dinner, have some, fun time with family? Do maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, one
Hmm.
hour. Keep your memory sharp. As one of my professor, always, who's my mentor, Dr. Lee, told me, keep your pencil sharp,
Hmm.
meaning, at least, keep it, just work a couple of problems. You're not going to disconnect, or you're not going to be disconnected from the studying atmosphere, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. Um, Other thing that you want to plan is, do not rush things. Do not force yourself to learn things. Don't be shy to ask questions. You have a friend who took the PE, pass or fail, even. You could say, hey, what did you learn from your experience?
Hmm.
Can you share with me some of the things that you learned from taking the PE? Um, Other thing that you want to keep in mind is, dedicate some time.
Right.
For the weekends, I don't know. A lot of people like to go and have fun, especially in Colorado, hiking, biking, whatever you want to you want to call it. And then they forget to have a goal. Put your goal. Just make sure that you have. Okay, I'm taking it in September 2020. 2022? How many months I need to study?
Hmm.
Am I gonna be really um productive with weekdays versus weekend? And take breaks. Always take breaks. Do not, as I mentioned, do not stress yourself. Do not spread yourself thin. Make sure that you take a fresh air. Maybe I take it every probably 50 minutes when I study. I
Hmm.
don't want, I study, I like focus, no phone, nothing for 50 minutes. But then I reward myself. I maybe play with my phone. I go talk to my wife and play with the kid, just go on a walk, eat something. Food is always good, dark
Hmm.
chocolate, whatever. So uh, that I think it varies from person to person,
Hmm.
but I think bottom line is, make sure that you are committed to the thing that you are trying to do. You're taking a big test, you have to be responsible. Don't say, "Oh, I took the FE and I passed it." Okay, maybe the FE was for you fresh, as you mentioned, and you did not, have to do a lot of brush and memory. But the
Hmm.
PE, I'm pretty sure the breadth, a lot of people will have some difficulty. At least from my experience, a lot of PE comes to me and say, "Hey, I want to take the PE next, month. Do you think that I will be able to do it?" I was like, "Well, how far you not been practicing water resources, some hydraulics?
Hmm.
Oh, it's been a while. Take some time, familiarize yourself with the manual or other manuals for structural. Don't be hesitant to go to ACI and read some of the
Hmm.
important chapters. Practice problems, tons of problems. Understand, do not memorize everything,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, no, I agree. That's some great advice. I like the plan. I think staying focused and having a plan is important. I also think don't beat yourself up, right? Don't try to aim for perfection. I mean, you're studying, you're preparing. Things are going to happen. Just make sure that you're ready when it comes for game day. Um, these are all great strategies and some tips that you've shared with the listeners. At the beginning of the podcast, I said, "Hey, Nabeal is more than just an engineer. You are also the CEO and founder of Legend for Tutoring." So, tutoring, it used to be something that was only available or desired by a small population, and
Hmm.
then I think COVID came around and it put education on its hind legs, right? A
Hmm.
lot of things changed and people started to, for one, you went virtual, right? A lot of these, almost every school went virtual, remote. Students were learning how to adapt to this virtual world. You didn't have that interface, face to face with the teachers anymore. Parents, once you get to a certain grade, parents' ability to help you with your homework is reduced, right? I know my
Hmm.
son's a freshman, and I'm looking at his homework thinking, "Whoa, yeah, let's get a tutor." So I think tutoring has become more mainstream.
Hmm.
So, what got you started, or what was your desire to start tutoring?
That's a very good question. Thanks, Chris, for asking this.
Sure.
I started tutoring way back when I came here to the US. On another podcast, I said that multiple times. Tutoring is not only a job. Tutoring is a passion that it's a gift from God. Some people really can be a great tutors. Some
Hmm.
people can't. It doesn't mean that they're either they can't deliver information or they're not smart. It's just like a talent. It's a
Hmm.
gift. I personally love to tutor math. I started with math, when I was a freshman. I helped some friends with, it was not really official tutoring. It's more of like, can you help me with this algebra question? Can you help me with this calculus questions? And then kind of like, I would say gradually slash rapidly, increased by time. I think that I start, doing more statics. Okay, this is some fun stuff. Mechanics of materials, concrete design. Why not adding those on my, to tutor list, right? And then I start tutoring gradually after finished my undergrad, like officially being a tutor. um, Math, some physics, some civil engineering classes. And then after I took my master, I said, you know what? I want to be a professor. That's my goal. And was originally I wanted to be my professor or wanted to be a professor. And then with obviously respective time, with time flies, I was like, why not, since COVID hit,
Hmm.
why not take advantage of this and just start a really small, teeny tiny business, with some folks and see if it's going to work or
Hmm.
if it's going to like fail. If it's going to fail, it's not going to cost me more than probably 5 grand and just done. We're going to flip the page, right? So COVID did, sadly, I want to say this, COVID did me a really huge favor, right?
Right.
Even though that COVID is obviously, we don't want to have COVID, but it helps a lot because as you mentioned, a lot of the family or moms or dads, they can help with a certain age. After eighth grader, ninth grader, you're talking to them Chinese. What is this pre-calculus or whatever? I
Hmm.
can't read AP calculus. What is this sign? The integral. What is that derivative? Let's get a tutor. So with COVID hit, help people to come virtual because obviously they're scared of COVID, and that helps me a lot. I started the company with some folks. We're a total of 4 founders. I'm the main founder and the CEO of the company of the Legends for Tutoring. That was exactly end of March 2020.
Oh, wow.
So it was pretty new. So it was like only 1 year plus a couple of months. So we hit really milestones, and I'm very happy to share if you would like to hear, later.
No, that's a great story. One thing that caught my eye is looking at your website and it says tutoring from anywhere.
Hmm.
What in the world does that mean?
Okay, so that's my idea. Tutoring from anywhere comes from some people that came to the Legend to get some help from Canada, Europe, Middle East, Qatar, Emirates, Jordan, Lebanon, um, Colombia, from all over the places. So I said, hey guys, we're helping some people from, all over the places. We have a client from London. We have a client from, all the way Middle East, from Emirates, from Qatar. Oh, I have Kamar, one of my, clients. He's down in or up in Canada. Why not saying tutoring from anywhere? And they're like, start laughing at me. I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I was like, whatever. It made sense to me. Let's do it.
I love it, Nabil. It makes a lot of sense to me, and it shows your outreach. It shows your global footprint.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. And I mean, I know we're running out of time today, and I'd love to have you back. But I appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your experience with the audience about your journey to PE. I also appreciate you sharing your tutoring story, and it's kind of cool to meet somebody that is also about helping people, right? Tutoring is a wonderful service, whether you get it through, we do tutoring or you get it through Legends. I think if you need some help, as we mentioned earlier, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Mm,
You can't know everything, and I think it takes a bigger person to reach out for help
mm.
and say, man, I need some help. So I tell my son, look, I can't help you in this. This math is, I don't remember it. I went to school in the 90s. So let's get a tutor there. So, but Nabil, hey, thanks for coming out. But before we leave for the day, any words of wisdom you want to share?
Um, I'm going to mention again, tutoring is not something that you have to be shameful that you're doing.
Hmm.
Sadly, some people come and say, uh, I've been really great, but I can't figure things out. I don't know what's happening to me. I'm being distracted, blah, blah, blah. I was like, tutoring is a noble thing.
Hmm.
My mom used to, bring tutors to me to the
Hmm.
house, and my dad as well. And one thing that really motivates me and inspired me to do tutoring, that my mom, when she really found someone who's good, not
Hmm.
only with the subject, it's like a mentor to
Hmm.
you who can help you. She will like really buy on that tutor. She'll like stick with this
Hmm.
person, just make sure. And that's what I really want to do. Want to make sure that people are happy with what they're doing and learning, because tutoring is not all about money. It's also about, can we put a smile on your face, whether
Hmm.
through the great school of PE, or whether through us Legends for Tutoring. We're very, very small compared to school of PE. So if you need more help, definitely reach out to Chris.
I appreciate that, Nabil. And you know what? You're right. Tutoring, whether it's tutoring or review courses, is not about just the transfer of knowledge. It's about forming the connections. And I think on a level, tutoring does that because it's more of a personal connection, right? It's
Mhm.
more one-on-one, or maybe it's a tutor plus a small group. So, just remember that when you guys are out there preparing for your exams, that there's resources available to you. But Nabil, I want to appreciate you coming out here. Love to have you back. For everyone out there, have a wonderful rest of your week. But Nabil, thanks for joining us here today.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Bye bye.